Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service through a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. It is Sunday, August 21st, 2022. And if you have any interesting observations or photos or questions you might want to pass on to me, you can reach me at peter.chan@noaa.gov. And as I always try to advertise here, if you would like additional weather information on top of what I provide, you can always go to weather.gov, which is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii to the lower left. And when you point and click on that map, it'll bring up forecast, any relevant watches, warnings, or advisories that are in effect. And it allows you to check up on family and friends in different part of the country. And today, this Sunday afternoon, we do have flood watches out for portions of Texas along the Red River Valley there between Oklahoma and North Texas into northwest Louisiana. Also, red flag warnings for portions of northeast Oregon, southeast Washington State into Idaho for the threat of dry thunderstorms that could start fires. And the heat will continue out there over portions of the northwest in the week ahead. Here in Alaska, we have flood advisories along the Kenai River. No major flooding is anticipated. The river level continues to just slowly creep upward from all of the significant rain here we've seen over the past month. So now the river levels along Kenai, they are getting up near minor flood stage, so expect high and swift flows, especially for people that are recreating. This is the heart of the fishing season now. Geomagnetic field, the Earth's upper atmosphere remains at unrest, so there's still potential for some modest visible displays of the northern lights. Nothing too terribly active or exciting, but keep an eye out for if you happen to have clear skies, which is not that common at the time being. Overall, the wet pattern will continue into this coming week, especially along the Gulf Coast. Not going to rain steadily each day, but there are going to be a couple of systems that are going to be enhancing rainfall in certain areas. And then overall, as we close out August and move into the first few days of September, it is looking like temperatures are going to moderate statewide, even warm up a bit above normal, especially across the interior. And I'll show you that here toward the end of this program. Well, the webcams from the Federal Aviation Administration, Wiley Post, Will Rogers Memorial Airport there up toward Barrow and Utqiagvik, overcast skies, 34 degrees. You can see that lower cloud cover, a little bit of light fog. Meanwhile, over toward the Elkhorn border, Eagle is enjoying sunny skies as well as areas down toward Northway with temperatures in the 70s, very pleasant. And then back across the western Kenai there where the Kenai River is elevated, Soldotna, some light showers, 61 degrees. It's been rather dreary and rainy there at times. Meanwhile, Ketchikan, the southern panhandle, enjoying an absolutely another gorgeous late summer day, sunny and warm temperature at 73 degrees. Some areas will finish out the day mid-upper 70s there in the southern panhandle, but there is some moisture that is creeping northward. A marine layer here is an image of the southeastern panhandle, Haida Gwaii there toward the center bottom. And you notice that area of that marine layer of lower cloud cover and fog lifting northward. That's going to be moving into the Ketchikan, Metlakatla areas here as we go into this evening and overnight. So not quite the sunny, clear skies as what you've enjoyed over the weekend coming up for tomorrow. And the only advisory to pass along is the flood advisory for along the Kenai River there through the western Kenai. As a result, we've seen the Kenai River levels just slowly rise upward here over the past few weeks because of the heavy rainfall since really mid-July. And a quick check of the river gauge there just below Ski Lock Lake. We anticipate the river level there to reach minor flood stage of 13 feet at some point this evening, this Sunday evening, or certainly by early Monday morning, and continue to slowly rise upward there Tuesday into Wednesday. And we don't anticipate the river level to be coming down anytime soon. Same thing down there towards Soldotna, even though not up to flood stage, the river has come up a good 1.5 feet since the last 10 days, and it is expected to get up close to 11 feet. by the time we get into Tuesday afternoon or early on Wednesday. Satellite imagery shows a stream of moisture still coming in off there through the western Gulf, and that's what's keeping the bouts of rain going. It might temporarily have let up a bit with the exception of the Chugach there on the east side of the Kenai Peninsula and the west side of Prince William Sound. But a fair amount of cloud cover there extends across much of the mainland and into the interior. Some of those showers are already making as far north as the Brooks Range. Meanwhile, really clear skies there, southern panhandle for this afternoon, and out over British Columbia, really clear skies and warm to hot conditions thanks to a big warm ridge of high pressure in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. At the surface, that high pressure ridge extends up into the panhandle and along the northeastern Gulf. That's the surface reflection, but the bigger one there, the mid and upper levels there, really bringing those warm temperatures. And we have the low that's sitting south of the Alaska Peninsula. This low is just going to sit and spin there with the occluded front just gradually weakening around it, becoming more of a trough. We have a lingering trough up along the Alaska Range into the southern portion of the Yukon, with some scattered showers north of that and another little trough working its way through the Seward Peninsula with some areas of rain or scattered showers as well. There'll be another piece of energy coming out of the western bearing that's going to have another low with it heading southeastward. Meanwhile, the low by Monday afternoon still is sitting there south of the Alaska Peninsula in the North Pacific, with areas of rain continuing, especially on the east side of the Kenai Peninsula, and scattered showers again across areas of the interior. Plenty of lower cloudiness and fog lingering along the Arctic coast into the lower Chukchi Sea out over the colder waters. And Tuesday afternoon, the low that's south of the Alaska Peninsula in the North Pacific further weakens as the next piece of energy comes in out of the central bearing. That'll be heading southeastward, and yet another system way back toward Japan and Kamchatka. That's going to be another one that eventually influences things later this week into next weekend, just kind of keeping this overall pattern going. As I mentioned yesterday, we've had a data problem with some of the temperatures coming out of the Anchorage office. We hope our IT staff will be able to correct that here early this coming week. Otherwise, low temperatures Monday morning, 50s in the Panhandle, upper 40s to generally 50 or higher across south central areas and through the Alaska Peninsula. Coldest temperatures along the Arctic coast. A few areas could be down near freezing there. And then temperatures Monday afternoon should get back up above 70, Fairbanks eastward through, say, Tok, Northway, and Eagle. Not quite as warm there in the southern Panhandle. Will be a bit more cloud cover and marine layer to deal with. Temperatures there in the 60s. Anchorage may be able to get readings back up around or a bit above 60, but along the coastal areas there of the Kenai down through Kodiak, highs generally in the mid-upper 50s. And lows Tuesday morning will once again be in the 50s throughout the Panhandle. North of the Alaska Range to about the Yukon River, lower 50s, and then across the North Slope, we are looking for lows mid-upper 30s with mid-30s along the Arctic coast. And then Tuesday afternoon, still a few 70-degree temperature holdouts, perhaps there at Fairbanks and over toward Eagle and Northway. Could see a 70-degree reading or two there popping up to in the far south end of the Panhandle on Tuesday as well. Let's take a moment now and look at the Climate Prediction Center 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, August 27th through August 31st. So that wraps up the end of the month. It has the center of warmest above normal temperatures over the west central interior, along the lower middle Yukon Valley, and much of the state generally seeing above normal temperatures and a little below normal as you get out along the Alaska Peninsula, Sandpoint, westward through Dutch Harbor toward Adak. But other than that, definitely some warmer temperatures expected in through west central areas up there toward Galena, McGrath. And then the 8 to 14 day outlook for temperature, August 29th into the first few days of September, is overall reflecting a potential for above normal temperatures across much of the mainland, especially the southern two-thirds into the northern half of the Panhandle, which would place many temperatures in the 60s to maybe a few 70s, but overall better than what we have been doing with a little below normal temperatures again out across the tip of the Alaska Peninsula into the eastern Aleutians. Rainfall should average still a little above normal in the east and south central areas, and especially along the Gulf Coast in through the Panhandle, maybe a little below normal along the central Arctic coast toward Utqiagvik and Dead Horse. Otherwise near normal for the west coast and down through the Alaska Peninsula. And then finally, as we go from the very end of August into the first few days of September, the 8 to 14-day precipitation outlook is calling for precipitation still to average a bit above normal south central through the east along the Alcan border, in through the Panhandle, and then just a little below normal along the southwest coast, the lower YK deltas.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time for your aviation weather. If you have a flight planned Monday or on Tuesday, we're going to continue to see low pressure, not just at the surface, but aloft, out over the Bering and then swinging southeastward across the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and setting up there over the North Pacific, just southwest of the Gulf of Alaska. And this overall pattern is going to hold up through this upcoming week into next weekend. So we do expect areas along the Alaska Peninsula, Western Gulf to continue to see IFR conditions along with a feed of moisture, especially along the Western Gulf coast. Also extending northward across the southwest interior, up through the middle Yukon Valley to the Brooks Range, and then finally we have other areas of moisture, low-level cloudiness, fog along the Arctic coast. For Monday afternoon, look for those lower clouds and areas of fog continuing along the Arctic coast, and then the IFR conditions expanding south of the Brooks Range, and especially there through the Gulf, up through Cook Inlet to the Kenai, eastward into the northern portion of the Panhandle for Monday afternoon. Tuesday morning, rather widespread IFR conditions expand southward there across the Panhandle and much of the Gulf, extending westward toward Prince William Sound along the eastern Kenai, entrance of Cook Inlet. Still IFR conditions along areas of the Arctic coast and then back out through much of the Bering, especially along the Aleutian chain. And for Tuesday afternoon, still IFR conditions there across areas of the interior south of the Brooks Range, extending up through the southwest, the Alaska Peninsula, much of the Western Gulf, including the Kenai, Kodiak Island, eastward into the northern half of the Panhandle. Anaktuvik Pass will generally see IFR conditions throughout the day on Monday, as will Atigun Pass. As we drop further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill passes, we'll see MVFR conditions early but becoming IFR, especially the east entrances. There's a lot of moisture butting up against the south and side of the Alaska Range as the result of the southeast southerly flows ahead of that low pressure in the North Pacific. Rainy Pass MVFR also becoming IFR. And look for generally IFR conditions, Windy Pass, especially the south entrance southward as we drop down into Cook Inlet. Isabel Pass, though, should see a little drier conditions. VFR should prevail. Isabel eastward along the eastern portion of the Alaska Range in through Metasta Pass on Monday. Further south and west, Tanita Pass will start out MVFR, perhaps becoming VFR, but areas to the south and west of Tanita Pass, especially southward, will be IFR. Portage Pass may start out MVFR Monday morning, but give way to IFR conditions as there is plenty of moisture there out over the Gulf and along the Gulf Coast. Chilkoot and White should start out VFR Monday morning, giving way, though, to IFR conditions that will prevail into Monday night and Tuesday morning. Freezing levels are lowest along the Arctic coast, 2,000 feet aloft there around Kaktovik. And then as we look, highest freezing levels extend out over the Panhandle above 12,000 feet to near 14,000 feet at Haida Gwaii. And freezing levels rise up above 10 to 12,000 feet and 14,000 feet there out across the more remote western Aleutians. Greatest threat for considerable moderate icing on Monday will be along the western Gulf Coast, including the east side of the Kenai, Kodiak Island up through the entrance of Cook Inlet to around Mount Douglas and Kamishak Bay. Generally 12,000 to a flight level of 18,000 feet. And we'll also see some potential for icing there along the south side of the Brooks Range, north of the Yukon River, 7,000 to 14,000 feet. Upper level jet stream winds are strongest out over the Gulf. We have a southerly flow, 95 to 100 knots at 30,000 feet. The primary low there south of the Alaska Peninsula. Another low there the west side of the Seward Peninsula, with generally north flow out over the central areas of the Bering Sea. On 9,000 foot level, 700 millibars, we see southeast flow, 40 to 45 knots across much of the western Gulf in through the Kenai and up into the entrance there of Cook Inlet. And then finally bringing it down to 3,000 feet, just below 850 millibars. We see the winds southeasterly there along the western Gulf, the east side of the Kenai on up into the entrance of Cook Inlet, 40 to 45 knots. On the backside of the low, Eastern Aleutians, northeast and north winds 40 knots. And the greatest threat for turbulence for Monday, some considerable moderate turbulence will exist there around areas of the western and northern Gulf. Surface to 4,000 feet, surface to 5,000 feet, and then as we go further westward, out through the eastern Aleutians, surface to 3,000 feet especially. So that wraps it up for a look at your aviation weather. Be sure to check the latest conditions and forecast if you are planning a flight, and if you are able to get off the ground, have a safe one.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us here today is Eric Stevens from the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, GINA for short. And Eric, you frequently come on the show to tell us about these really cool things that we're doing with satellites over Alaska and how we can use these really awesome tools. But I'm thinking all the while there has to be a mad scientist somewhere working on the next cool thing in the satellite laboratory. What is being developed today?
Right. Well, you know, when I was a kid growing up in the boonies in North Dakota there, on Sunday after church, the old people, like my parents and their parents, would gather and have coffee and talk. And I kind of eavesdropped on them a little bit. And the theme of a lot of these conversations seemed to be, well, isn't it amazing what they can do these days, someone would say.
Sure.
And I was thinking, oh, I don't know, I was too young.
Right.
Well, now I'm old enough in the weather satellite business
You can remember when.
the new generation of weather satellites, I'm starting to say, isn't it amazing what they can do these days? Because it's always improving.
Yes.
Maybe an analogy here is like television. Television started in black and white, then it went to color. Analog signal transitioned to digital here a number of years ago. Standard definition becomes high definition. Right. Well, weather satellites are changing too. First weather satellites went up around 1960, not that long ago. No. It's comparatively young science. And every time a new series of satellite is launched, we learn from the past, so the mad scientists decide, well, we could make the next satellite even better in such and such a respect. Yes. And now the United States is on the verge of launching, or in progress of launching, a series of new geostationary satellites that are better than ever before. Okay. Let's take a look at some of the previews of what these new satellites can do.
Peek inside the lab here, okay.
Yeah, and so we'll peek in, and here are some mad scientists and mad technicians dressed in bunny suits. This is, believe it or not, this is the business end of a weather satellite under construction in a clean room. You don't want a speck of dust on the lens of a weather satellite's camera. So this is done in a clean environment. They are building a geostationary satellite there.
Oh, cool.
This new generation of satellites, if you had to answer the question, why are these better? Why do we care? Okay. You could answer it with 3 words: faster, better, more. The new generation of satellites are faster than the older ones. The images are sharper, they're better, and there's more spectral channels. We'll talk about that.
Any one of these called Steve Austin? It sounds faster, better, stronger.
Yeah. You know what though? These things cost more than $6 million.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They're pricey, but they are an essential tool for the Weather Service to fulfill its mission of protecting lives and property.
Exactly.
You got to have the tool to do the job, and it helps all of us when we get the accurate forecast, the warning in time, and this is the tool. Faster. On left here, we see what the old generation of satellites could scan in 5 minutes. On the right, that's what you get in 5 minutes, the whole planet, or at least one side of it. So it's faster. That means you can take more images over a given amount of time and make smoother movie loops out of that. Because animating movie loops really helps you highlight a feature that maybe you can't see as well in a single image.
Absolutely does, yep.
Let's zoom into a small piece of real estate like Texas.
Sure.
And we can see here a satellite that has a 1-minute movie loop visible light. You can see thunderstorms boiling there.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, the rippling of the top of the thunderstorm. This is a fun movie loop. We're going to be able to see things like this more and more often because of the new satellites being generated. Some things are only evident in animation. So that's faster. Well, what's better? We're able to now have sharper imagery than before. The Japanese have a satellite that uses the same imager that is on the new generation of satellites that America is launching too. An imager, that's just a word for camera. It's the camera on a weather satellite. We have something called the Advanced Baseline Imager.
Sounds important.
ABI. It's important enough, it has an acronym. Everything's an acronym. Well, an ABI-like instrument is here over the Western Pacific, and we can see this color image. This is what a human eye might see if you were riding on the satellite. But it's a little bit fuzzy. With new technology, you can post-process the image taken by the satellite to highlight and sharpen some of the features. So this image here of the Western Pacific then becomes this image. Thanks to the processing techniques, yes, this is the newest technology. So we've got a new satellite that can provide better data than ever before. And on the ground, we can process it better than before as well to really sharpen up the imagery and to give us a better view of the weather than ever before. So faster and better and more. What do we mean by more? Well, on the older generation of satellites, the imager, the camera, had 5 slices of the spectral pie, visible imagery, infrared imagery, something we can't see from the human eye. A lot of different slices of the pie. We're going from 5, the new imager has 16 slices. Each slice has its own relevance. Some are best for volcanic ash, for smoke, for dust, for telling the difference between smoke and dust, which can look similar under some infrared channels, but other ones bring out certain things. All of these 16 bands are important. In fact, some of the mad scientists, they didn't want 16, they wanted 24. There's always more you can do. But that'll be the next generation of satellites. So now we say, isn't it amazing what we can do these days? And you know what? It makes you think, well, what's the future going to be like too? It's so important to be able to know what's going on now in the weather. If you're going to forecast the future, you got to know where things are now. And satellites are the way to see that, especially in Alaska, where we don't have as many observations down on the ground. The satellites fill in the holes.
Yeah, really important stuff. And I love hearing about what we can see right now, but I love thinking about what is possible in the future. It's amazing stuff. And since you paid for it, it's a good time to learn about it. If you'd like, check out the website at www.goes-r.gov. And as I understand, it's a really easy website to use.
Oh yeah, a lot of good information about what these new satellites mean to Americans. And it's the Weather Service's mission to protect lives and property, and this is the tool how to do it.
Cool stuff, Eric. Thanks so much for sharing that with us today, and thank you for joining us right here in Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you next time. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and starting out with the sea ice edge, well, we can notice that across the Arctic coastline there, the Beaufort Sea, not much in the way of ice remains, and that'll be the case here through the slow melt-off through the rest of the summer. And out along the Russian coast, that ice also has tended to dissipate, melting, especially that little bit that did manage to get carried by currents around through the south side of the Bering Strait. And looking at the southeast panhandle for Monday's marine forecast, in fact, we could see winds on the outer coast actually approach small craft, so keep that in mind. Forecasts may be updated here come Monday morning. For now, though, at least 20 knot winds, waves running 6-7 feet. Inner channels, look for southeast to south winds 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet. And then on Tuesday, winds across the inner channels will be variable, 5 knots around Ketchikan up through Petersburg, 10 to 15 knots as we go north of Petersburg through Juneau and Lynn Canal with waves of 2 to 3 feet. The outer coast, strongest winds will be north of Sitka. Look for southeast winds 20 to 25 knots there west of Yakutat with waves at least up through that northeastern Gulf Coast up around 6-7 feet. Across the northwest Gulf, including the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet for Monday, winds will be strongest there at the entrance of Cook Inlet and out to areas northeast of Kodiak. Look for northeast to east winds 30 knots, and also off the Kenai, waves running 8-9 feet. Northeast winds 15 knots there in Prince William Sound with waves of a couple of feet. And by Tuesday, winds do come down a bit. Northeast winds 15 knots in Prince William Sound with waves still 2-3 feet. But at least off the Kenai and in through the entrance of Cook Inlet, winds will be out of the southeast to east at around 20 knots with waves of 5 to 6 feet. On Monday, Shelikof Strait will see 30-knot northeasterly winds with waves of 8 to 10 feet. Easterly winds on the south side of Kodiak Island down to near Chiknik with waves running about 7 to 9 feet. And winds will be northeasterly to northerly 25 knots from Bristol Bay down through north of Cold Bay with waves of 4 to 7 feet. On Tuesday, winds across Kodiak Island will generally be out of the southeast to east around 20 knots with waves of 5 to 6 feet or so. Areas along Bristol Bay, southeast winds 20 knots, waves a few feet, and then winds turn northwest 15 knots across Sand Bay, Cold Bay with waves of 4 feet And the outlook for the eastern and central Aleutians on Monday, winds will generally be out of the northeast at around 25 to 30 knots. The eastern Aleutians trailing off to 20 knots there from Atka and Adak westward. And waves will run 6 to 8 feet on the North Pacific side and 6 to 8 feet as well on the Bering side. Winds across the Aleutian chain on Tuesday will generally be out of the west at 15 to 20 knots. Waves 4 to 5 feet on the North Pacific side, and again 4 to 5 feet on the Bering side, and upwards around 5-6 feet west of Adak. Along the southwest coast, winds will generally be out of the north at 15 to 20 knots, with waves of 4 to 6 feet, maybe a little higher towards 7 feet down towards St. Paul and St. George. And then on Tuesday, winds will be a little more variable. Look for southeast winds to 20 knots and Norton Sound waves 3 to 4 feet. Winds turn northwesterly in toward Hooper Bay, lower YK Delta at 10 knots with waves of 2 to 3 feet, and then southeast winds around, at about southwest winds rather at 15 knots and waves about 3 feet there, St. Paul and St. George. And then along the Arctic coast, 35-knot gales there out of the east and vicinity of Kaktovik, with waves 6-7 feet, trailing off to 25 knots. Easterly winds from Utqiagvik down through Wainwright and Point Ley, and then turning more northeast to northerly through the Bering Strait. Waves will run as high as 8-9 feet off of Cape Lisburne and Point Ley, and around 4 feet through the Bering Strait north side of St. Lawrence Island. And on Tuesday, still easterly 35-knot gales in the vicinity of Kaktovik with 8-9 foot waves, trailing off to easterly winds 25 knots Utqiagvik down through Point Ley with waves of 7 feet. And then the lower Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait, winds will be northeast to east 15 to 20 knots with 4 to 5 foot waves, and winds turning more northwesterly on the northwest side, north side there of St. Lawrence, with waves running about 3 feet. Monday afternoon, still low pressure sits and spins south of the Alaska Peninsula there in the North Pacific. Another piece of energy working its way into the western Bering off of Kamchatka. And then as we go into Tuesday, the low still sitting there and weakening south of the Alaska Peninsula, with that next piece of energy crossing the central Bering, which will reinvigorate more low pressure and another round of rain along areas of the Gulf Coast for midweek. That does it for our show tonight. Thank you for watching, and join me again tomorrow night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.